Welcome to our webinar of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, the European Border Regime and the Balkans and Connecting Resistances. We have attendees and panelists from all around Europe, and we are very happy to host this event. And we would like to thank our participants and commentators for participating in this webinar, and we are looking forward to have today fruitful exchange. And as you probably noticed, this event will be recorded and published afterward. So I hope this is fine, and because a lot of people asked us to watch this after because they are not able to join us at this moment. And first I will present very shortly myself. I'm Vladan Jeremic from Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung Southeast Europe. And I will moderate this first inputs, this first part of this webinar. And my colleague from Athens office of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, Maria Oshana, will moderate the second part of the webinar. And this part will be dedicated more to comments and discussion. And this event is actually a cooperation between our offices, and it is something that we would like to also to address on the more wider level, that only in the Balkans and only in the region, but also to include voices from the European context and other voices in this event, and to see how we can tackle all these questions that that speaker will be addressing. The main idea of this webinar is to start a discussion about the situation of the people on the move in the Balkans, and to hear about new developments, like, for example, also about legal cases that against violence in Serbia or Croatia that have been led recently. And we want actually to provide a space for the practitioners to talk about networks and mobility struggles along the Balkan route, and discuss how they can be connected and strengthened. Probably you know that since the long summer of migration and the closure of the official Balkan corridor in 2016, we are witnessing that the Balkans has become more dangerous, more restrictive, with the more restrictive policies at the external border of the European Union. And brutal border pushbacks and mistreatment and the rise of racist sentiments are reported frequently. With the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and the introduction of the state of emergency in the Balkan countries, this led to additional deterioration in the already deplorable human rights situation of the people on the move. And this is particularly the case. This is particularly the case in the camps in Greece, where migrants are heavily exposed to the risk of infection. I would like to also to say something, because this webinar is a great opportunity for us to present a recently published study, the Dark Sides of Europeanisation, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and the European Border Regime. And this study was published by Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung Southeast Europe. And we are especially glad to welcome authors of the study who are among the speakers, and to thank them because they have been working a lot with us during this time to make this publication possible. In short, crucial finding of this study is its illumination of the role that EU-supported organizations, agencies, institutions play in the increasing violence along the Balkan route. The analysis shows that migration in the Southeast Europe has become multidirectional, which can be described by the term the Balkan circuit, rather than only the Balkan route. This is the result of systemic pushbacks and denial of the right to apply for asylum. Non-EU states, especially around the Schengen zone and in the Balkans, are actually serving as a kind of, let's say, dumping ground or the buffer zone for the people on the move. This process of externalization of EU borders in the Balkans has led to increasing violence, to surveillance and militarization of the border, and also, which is affecting very much all us, is the criminalization of solidarity practices. I will present now our 4 initial speakers who will provide us with short inputs on several aspects I have mentioned. And first speaker will be Nijara Ahmetašević from Bosnia and Herzegovina. She is independent researcher and journalist, and she has been also several days ago affected by this problem of criminalization of solidarity. Maybe she can also say about what happened recently in Bosnia. And after her will speak Andrej Kurnik, an assistant professor from the University of Ljubljana and from Slovenia. After Andrej, Madine Bach, who works for GUI NGL on issues of the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs will speak, and Eleni Tako, who is Deputy Director and Head of Advocacy of Human Rights 360 from Greece. Just a few technical issues before we start with Nijara Ahmetašević. We ask you kindly to use this questions and answers Q&A chat box. If you have questions to our speakers, and to send to all of us. After these first initial inputs that we will have from the speakers, we will have actually an opportunity to hear several members of activist and human rights organizations from the Balkans to find out their positions and questions. And then we can see how we can, what we can do together and what kind of conclusions we can draw out of this. Just also one technical remark, because we are doing all this through Zoom, that speakers need to unmute the microphone when they speak. And they will be spotlight. That means that they will be in the center of the screen when they speak. And just for the attendees, it would be great if your questions are addressed to the specific person and to all attendees and panelists. Just in the Q&A box, write, this is a question that I'm addressing to this and this person. I will collect the questions and in the end share it with you, while my colleague will moderate the second part of the discussion and comments and inputs by other participants. So I would like to ask Nijara Ahmetašević to tell us something about the present situation of Bosnia, who became a hotspot for the people on the move, and situation about Bosnian-Croatian border, but also to think about structural similarities from the region and aspects where the joint struggles can be led. Please, Nijara, I hope that you can start your appearance.
Yes, thank you very much, Vladan, and thank you to Rosa Luxemburg for this opportunity to speak about this, what I find a very important issue at the moment in entire Europe. I will start with something that Vladan mentioned before, and that's kind of attack that another one, I have to be honest, over the last 2 years that I was a victim of, and perpetrators are local police in Sarajevo. As a journalist, I was on the street, and I noticed the big police van approaching one of the shopping centers in Sarajevo, where usually many people on the move, refugees and migrants, are spending the days because they don't have a possibility to earn money or to provide for themselves other than standing in the streets of Sarajevo and other cities in Bosnia and Herzegovina and asking the local people to help them. Usually they don't beg, but they rather sell paper tissues. And that is the way for them to keep their dignity even though they are forced to live a very difficult life, sleeping and living in the streets of Sarajevo in old houses, abandoned houses. Some of these places are very dangerous even to enter because they are old and they are like the construction is shaking, but they are spending their days. Some of them are in some of these abandoned buildings for more than half a year. And many local people during the corona epidemic in Bosnia, but also now and before, they try to help them. So one of the ways to help them is also to give them some money when they are selling these paper tissues. So suddenly the police came and they jumped from the van, and they concluded that the two boys, very young boys, are somebody they should arrest. I don't know based on what they concluded this, because they did not ask them for the documents or they didn't even approach them to speak with them. They just started running toward them. The boys kind of like instinctively started running away from them, and I had my phone and I started filming all this. I wanted to see what will happen. Police was running after these two boys. One managed to get away. The other one was caught and was pushed down on the ground in a very violent way, hit a couple of times, and then taken to the police van. I followed the police and I recorded all this as a journalist, but also as a human rights defender. And when they opened the van, I could see more people who could be migrants and refugees. I guess that the only way for police to conclude who these people are, or to think that they could be a person of their interest, is their color of their skin. And that's the racism that we can see over the last 2 years, very often by the local police forces all over Bosnia and Herzegovina. So people are stopped from traveling by public transport, so bus or train, because of the color of their skin. They cannot move freely, even though the law permits them to move. And they are becoming more and more often victims of police violence in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is happening despite the fact that the European Union is very present in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that European Union is managing migrations in Bosnia and Herzegovina through their partners, being IOM, UNHCR, and other agencies, and that EU is financing existence of the camps here. We already call them concentration camps, because the living conditions for people in these camps run by the IOM with the presence of other organizations are not bearable. People are very often victims of different types of violence, and this violence often comes from the private security agencies paid by IOM or EU. And these private security agencies not only beating up people in Bosnia in the camps, but they use electroteasers, which is forbidden by the law in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Last week I met a boy. He is a young boy from India in his early 20s, and he told me that in the evening, in the night, he wanted to go out from the container where he lives together with 8 other boys. He wanted to go out to toilet, and the person from the private security agency stopped him on his way to toilet, and he pushed a teaser, electric teaser, against his chest 3 times. Basically, he could kill him. However, this violence, as well as the violence that is happening in Serbia more and more often, and we could see some of the very violent videos last week from one of the camps, is something that European Union at the moment is completely ignoring. They must be aware of this, because activists, volunteers, and refugees and people on the move themselves are reporting about this, are talking about this to the media. They talk and write about this through the social media too. And everything is very open, but EU is not reacting. So the violence that became kind of like normality at the EU borders is now entering the space of the Balkans, and is becoming everyday reality, not only for people on the move, but obviously also for the people who are following them in different ways, being volunteers, being a journalist, being human rights defenders, or just citizens who want to help to other human beings, because we also received reports from all over the Balkans about the citizens who are victims of the police because they try to help people they meet on the roads. However, the EU and the UN, I have to say, decided to stay quiet about this. In this way, they stayed quiet about the cages that activists and the people on the move reported exist in Bosnia in 2 locations in between at the border with Montenegro. These 2 cages are bought and donated to Bosnia from the EU. Even the last report that came from the office of the UN High Commissioner for Migrations do not mention these cages, because the agencies and the organizations that are working for the EU in Bosnia and Herzegovina done quite a lot to push the local government to just ignore this fact. In this way, if you speak with people who are at the moment in Bosnia and Herzegovina and who are living in the camps or in the streets, they're forced to live in the streets, they will talk to you about the violence that they're witnessing and that they're facing every day, like it's a total normal thing. So the boys that I know in some of the camps, they're telling me about how they're being punished if they don't behave well, whatever that means. They tell me that they have to obey in order not to be punished. To be punished means or to be beaten up by the private security agency, or like we have a video, the IOM lets in police, local police forces, and let them beat people as much as they want, in any way they want. Or we have cases where people were punished in the way that they were not allowed to enter the camps, or they were taken out from the camps and forbidden to come back. Even some minors were victims of this kind of attitude. And for them, it became normality, as well as it is normality for them that when they go toward Croatia, that there is a more 90% chance that they will be beaten, that they will suffer violence, or even that they will die. Over the last 1 month, more than 10 people died on the way to EU from Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the same time, the EU that is so present in Serbia, in Bosnia, in Montenegro, Kosovo, and other Balkan countries do not help to the local governments at all to make their asylum system more functional. And that is becoming a huge issue, especially because I personally meet many people who over the last month or more tired of so many times they're trying to cross the borders, tired of the violence, tired of like losing hope another time. They're deciding to stay in Bosnia, to try to stay in Bosnia, and they cannot even register. After that, the local government, but also some international officials here, they call them illegal or economic migrants who do not have a right to seek asylum even in the EU. And that is becoming a huge problem, because now we have many undocumented people in Bosnia who not only that they cannot reach the point where they will start their asylum process, but they even do not have a proper information of where to go and who to ask to protect them and to protect their basic human rights. I had to connect this, and I will end with that note, with something else that is happening. EU is the biggest donor in the region, in the Balkans, for many years. And over the years, EU, as well as other donors, they stop financing the organizations that are working with human rights, being human rights of people on the move or general human rights. So even the human rights of local people in all of these countries are very, very much endangered. And we are kind of like lost in this situation where EU is requesting one thing from us, and that is a rule of law, respect for human rights, and to comply with other requirements, but at the same time do not help at all, but even more putting a pressure on the governments to follow the rules and the way of acting which produces violence and which endangers even lives of people on the move, but I can say even of local people who believe in human rights and who are ready to defend the basic ideas of human rights.
Thank you, Nijara, very much. It is quite striking to hear all this, and especially if you mentioned the role of the EU, and also the study is showing what is the effect of so-called Europeanization in this respect and externalization of the European border regime. And I will now invite Andrej Kurnik from Ljubljana, from the University of Ljubljana, who is also activist who is working on this field since many years, to say what is actually this exactly this role of the EU and in the region. I invite Andrej to unmute. Please unmute yourself, Andrej.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So hi everybody. I would like to thank Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung first, and Vladan and Venke also for helping us so that this book is now out. First of all, I would like to say something about the latest development in Slovenia. I was asked about this even before by Vladan. So there are this huge protest against the new government, which is basically far-right government, that takes place for 8 weeks now. And this is quite related to the question we are talking about today, because let's say the ascent to power of this far-right government actually started in 2015, 2016, with the hysteria that was produced in the times of the what we call summer of migration. And what is also interesting is that Slovenia, as a European Union member state, that is responsible for the situation in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, because the Slovenian police is, at least since the mid of 2018, involved in the pushbacks. And those pushbacks are, of course, still taking place, but they started under the other government, which is not far-right government, but was so-called center-left liberal government. No? And this is something that we are encountering here, right? So actually, even when people started to talk about this, problematizing this, there was complete silence of the core European state or the European or institutions of the European Union when it comes to this question. And maybe this is the paradox of this situation, that now this could change, because there is a government that actually wants to really put Slovenia into the Orban's orbit, right? So in the Visegrad group. So maybe this is even the opportunity to make this problem of the pushback that really starts in Slovenia, and there are chain pushbacks, so this question is going to be finally addressed on the European level. Of course, this paradox shows a lot about what is the situation in the European Union nowadays when it comes to democracy and when it comes to human rights. So now to go to the question of the European responsibility, or the responsibility of European Union for the plight of the people on the move in the Balkans, what the study that we published showed is that, of course, European Union is responsible, although this responsibility is invisibilized. You cannot see it. You know? But at the beginning, I would like to say that when it comes to question of Europeanization of this post-socialist and post-Yugoslav region in general, there is also one important thing to take into account, that is that something like epistemic subjection exists now, in the sense that EU is considered as something that defines the standards of democracy and human rights. And then, of course, those societies are not so developed when it comes to democracy, kind of do not comply with these high standards, which is, of course, also quite problematic, because it really leads, to the situation in which this area, Balkan area in general, is kind of considered, to not to have epistemic dignities, in the sense that here there are traditions of democracy, and also the respect of tolerance and so forth, that we could mobilize against what is happening around the Balkan route or around the Balkan circuits. So what we, for example, claimed in the study is that so-called Europeanization, in fact, encourages the formation of subjugated exclusive forms of government now. So what we have since 2015, that all the problems in this region when it comes to democracy and lack of cohesion in the society, basically all these problems are getting even worse. And this is because of the role that this region has to play in the enforcing of what we call European border and migration regime. And certainly we detected EU responsibility on various levels. For example, one level is that EU borders, for example, in Slovenia, in Croatia, in Hungary, are militarized, right? So there are pushbacks daily happening there. There are armies on the also armies on the border and so forth. And of course, this then produces a situation that a lot of people are stuck in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia, and so forth. Then the other level is, of course, this process of EU accession, also the European integration, so-called, where, all the harmonization of legislation, of course, leads into those countries playing role in the management of the border regime. And then, of course, when we are talking about more sporadic interventions of the European Union, those interventions always establish or re-establish what is also called humanitarian, securitarian complex, So even if they come in with some funds, for example, to address the humanitarian aspect of the situation, it is at the same time, money that goes predominantly into the repression. Probably Nijara could say much more about this, for example, because it is clear what is happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina and also in Serbia. So I would like, I do not want to be long. I would just like to maybe pose the question to all of us, how to intervene in the situation that we are in now. And of course, as I said, I think it's really difficult to kind of refer to high moral standard of European Union and core European states, because it actually doesn't exist. It's kind of a very cynical thing. So maybe, we should really think how to intervene in the sense to support people on the move on the one hand, and on the other hand, to support local solidarity initiatives and potential on the route, around the route, right? And this is something that, for me, for example, is really interesting. That, for example, when the people in the move started to cross Bosnia and Herzegovina, there was a huge mobilization of the local population, huge solidarity. For example, people in Velika Kladuša often talked about this, but they got no support, right? They got no support for European institutions. They got no support for international institutions. And these people became, at the end, marginalized, right? Even persecuted. And at the end, what we have now, we have this kind of, monopoly over the route by the organizations like IOM, which at the same time apparently strengthens, the disintegration tendencies and the forms of bad bad corrupted government. No? So this would be kind of my question. Would it be possible to intervene in the way, for example, also from the, let's say, European Union and European core states, so that, let's say, management of the Balkan route becomes transparent and becomes democratic, and it basically, at the same time, this situation around the route enhances and strengthens the processes of democratization in the region, and not what is happening now, right? Which is completely opposite, which we can see is that everywhere, including in Slovenia, I mean, actually, this really leads to the deterioration of the situation and of the democratic standards and the standards of human rights.
Thank you, Andrei. This question of what we can do, it's in this situation is very good, and I think some of the people who will appear in the discussion part can maybe answer what are the concrete actions and what is to be done, and also the question like how we can approach the European Union context. In that sense, it is very, very valuable to understand and to talk about. And I would like to approach now Eleni Takov, who will talk about the situation of refugees and migrants in Greece, with a focus on the pushbacks, the hotspots and eviction, homelessness of recognized refugees, and possibilities of maybe regional cooperation. How you, Eleni, see this situation from your perspective?
Thank you, Vladan. Hello, everybody, and thank you to the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation for inviting me here. So I will try to give a very, very brief overview in terms of headlines, because it's a very big issue to exhaust in just 7 minutes. Just to start with what Vladan said in his introduction about the COVID-19 pandemic and the situation of migrants and refugees in Greece, which is becoming more and more deteriorated. As expected, the pandemic kind of collides with the long-standing structural inequalities in all countries. This is exactly the same in Greece, and this is even more true about migrants and refugees. So the situation in the reception and defecation centers and in camps all across the country is very bad. But on top of that, there is another, let's say, thing that should be mentioned. Just to give you an example, just today, the Minister of Migration and Asylum came out announcing that the lockdown will be extended until the 5th of July within the reception and identification centers in the islands and some camps in the mainland. Although, thank God, there was no confirmed case of COVID-19 in the reception and identification centers. So in a way, one can, let's say, see the opposite side of this success story of Greece, like really coping well with COVID-19. At the same time, there is a targeting of this population. We see a very, very toxic rhetoric about hygienic bombs in the islands. So it's not only that the living conditions are very bad, it's also that the public discourse is becoming more and more toxic in targeting migrants and refugees as an enemy that should be dealt with instead of people that need our help and support and solidarity. This is further exacerbated by the homelessness parameter that you mentioned, Vladan. So right now we have what the Greek government has called the exit period. So the exit period is the period where asylum seekers are being recognized as refugees, take their former recognition in the claim, and have to leave their accommodation facilities. An estimate says that 9,000 people should fall under this category, and right now and in the following months, another 11,000 people According to UNHCR stats yesterday, will have to leave the camps and the accommodation facilities within the months to come. This is a very, very pressing problem. This is linked to the images that you might have seen of central squares of Athens being populated by people that have nowhere to go. The official rhetoric of the government is that people are recognized, so they should be autonomous by now to make their own living. The reality is that since there are no pre-integration or integration measures there, so people are totally ghettoized, there's no way somebody can actually learn Greek or get integrated in the labor market or anything of that sort. So the reality is that people are stranded of their rights to have a decent way of life. They become stranded of their dignity, and they are gradually being left homeless in the streets. On top of this image, if I may just take 30 seconds to put another parameter, the one of what we would call people without legal documentation. So we do not only have the significant number of people that are being recognized as refugees and will thus have to leave the accommodation facilities, there is also a significant number of people whose claim is not recognized and they're left without any documentation. The new legislation in Greece has made access to asylum more and more difficult. It cuts on procedural safeguards in a way that having access to asylum becomes more and more difficult for people. So in this way, we will have, unfortunately, more and more people left in the streets without any documentation and any rights. In terms of the pushbacks, as Andrei also said, and my previous colleagues, we have been working in Greece for years, and illegal pushbacks, especially in the Evros region. The Evros region is the land border, the northern land border with Turkey, is a systematic phenomenon that has never really stopped, except perhaps during this summer of migration. I mean the summer of 2015 until to early 2016, where Dublin had essentially collapsed and people were walking along the Western Balkan route. Apart from these specific months, pushbacks in every region had never stopped. So as Human Rights 360, we have a team deployed on the ground in the Evros region, and we have been recording systematically incidents of pushbacks along the border, people of being illegally detained, beaten up very severely, and pushed back to Turkey by unidentified masked men without being granted any access to asylum. And in some cases, we have also been witnessing phenomena of chain refoulement, which means that people that we have been contacted that have contacted us when they were in Greece, we ended up finding them in Iran or Iraq. I mean, they have been chainly refouled to their countries of origin, where they are in risk of being persecuted or severe heavy torture. I'm saying that because it's very important to have the overview of the phenomenon. It's been there for at least since 2008, when the waves from in the region have augmented a lot. And as part of the Greek governments, I mean, not just this government, but the governments in the past as well, it has become as a kind of alternative border control, let's say. It's not isolated incidents, it's very systemic, and it happens all across the region. We have been publishing, of course, several reports with testimonies. We have been talking to the media. We have also addressed the government, the local prosecutors, trying to open up investigations. We have also partnered with Forensic Architecture. I don't know if you know the Forensic Architecture. They are a very well-known research group from Goldsmiths University that are trying also to use other kind of documentation, videos or audio or pins in the phones of people to try and document this process. Right now, and after, because the COVID-19 situation in Greece also coincided with the crisis, let's say, in the borders, with a lot of people from Turkey gathering from the other side of the border in Evros, and people also ending up in the Greek islands. Pushbacks have become something widely accepted in the Greek society. So they are now performed out of in the open. Before the crisis in the border, it was something more hidden in a way. And there is also a kind of operational intensification that we are witnessing. So apart from people that are being pushed back from the Evros region, there are also reports and testimonies of migrants and refugees that have been apprehended in the mainland. So a lot more into the country, that have been apprehended. Some of them even have documents, legal documentation, and they are secretly transferred to the Evros region and pushed back to Turkey. So I'm analyzing the whole image in order for you to have an overview of how widespread is this phenomenon. It's so widespread that just 2 days ago, the Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Rights, Junia Mijatovic, on the instance of the International Day for Refugees, came out and focused her intervention on the need to stop systemic pushbacks along the Western Balkan route on all countries, including Greece. Of course, and I will try to finish with that and open up also leave room for discussion. This is not something that happens in the blind eye of Europe. The testimonies that we get do not only include testimonies about Greek forces pushing people back, they also include testimonies of masked men speaking languages other than Greek. We have been reported instances of masked men speaking English or even German that are pushing people back along the Evros region. So I will just finish by saying, as my colleagues before me said, that this is an EU policy that's being implemented in the Greek borders. It's not Greece implementing a bilateral policy with Turkey. It's the EU implementing, or I don't know, the Greek government implementing the EU policy, or the EU implementing a deterrence policy through the Greek government. So I don't know which is the exact formulation of this phrase, but truth be told, this is part of the whole agenda of Europe to externalize border control even further and to militarize its borders. And in this sense, I do join what Andrei said, that we should see how we can cope with this phenomenon on a regional level and how we can talk among each other, also in the occasion of this panel, to find room for cooperation among us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see that we are sharing almost similar problems and almost similar conclusions, and especially about the role of European Union in this respect. And in this sense, I would like to invite Amandine Bach from GUI NGL to tell us something about what is happening there and what is happening with the European policies and politics at the EU external borders, and what does it actually means for us, for the Balkans. In one webinar 2 weeks ago, Cornelia Ernst was telling us about the new asylum package that is preparing, and we are somehow thinking that it will be even somehow worse than it is now. So it is, please, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, okay, I'll try. It's a big subject also, I mean, just to say that, as a political advisor, having worked for 7 years in the European Parliament for the United Left group, so I mean, our work and my work, I mean, alongside my MEPs all over these years has been to denounce exactly this EU policies. So we hope that nobody in this webinar sees me and even my group as part of this EU indeed policy of systematic pushbacks that I agree fully with Andrei and with Eleni is not, it's not isolated incidents. It is orchestrated and supported by the EU. There is complicity. I mean, national member states also have to be held accountable. I mean, it's not to diminish their responsibility, but the EU has to be made responsible as well, because also by the fact that they don't speak out against what's happening at the different levels, whether it's in Croatia or in Greece, or we've seen recently with Malta, this is complicity. And so I wanted to, and I really share the fact that we have this invisibilization that Andrei mentioned of EU's responsibility, because often in statements we attack then national member states. And then we end up in a debate as we have in Croatia about, and in Greece actually, it's when anybody criticizing these practices are traitors of the country. That's what we've seen of activists who are denouncing this, but also MEPs. Recently, one of our MEPs, Kostas Arvanitis, has been under huge attack by Greek government and MEPs for being a traitor and a friend of Erdogan, because he just submitted a question regarding pushbacks in the Mediterranean from Greece to Turkey, and is being called a traitor. And that is really an issue. And that's not only in Greece, it's the same in Croatia, it's the same in Malta as well. So it's exactly the same framing that all of these countries are using. And so indeed, we have to remember it's EU's borders, and that I would take the example as well that we've seen that the Commission assessed that Croatia is fit to enter Schengen. So this includes respecting Article 4 of the Schengen Borders Code, which means that Croatia normally should respect fundamental rights, while we know it's not the case at the European Parliament level. Our group, but also many other MEPs have criticized this assessment. Recently, for example, one of my MEPs, Malin Björk, from the Left Party in Sweden, questioned Commissioner Johansson in a private meeting whether the Commission will reevaluate their Schengen assessment of Croatia. And the Commissioner said that they will not reevaluate it, even if it was conducted before her term, and that now it's up to the Council. So they will not go back to this, which we think is a disgrace, because we know it was a political act to assess that Croatia was fit to enter Schengen. The Commission was well aware of the abuse, and then they instrumentalize the whole issue of supposedly a monitoring mechanism. So for us, it's really important. I mean, there are two things in what we've been doing over the years, and that we've been doing. It's one thing is visibilizing the violence. I mean, and by violence, it's the pushbacks, but it's also what Eleni mentioned. It's for example, the eviction of people who've been granted status. This is also, clearly a violence. And but for this, we've been working in hand with NGOs and activists on the ground, and we'll keep doing this. So, really do not hesitate for the people that have not worked with yet, to contact me, to report if you hear cases. We spent today the entire day trying to have the Greeks rescue the boat that was in the middle between Turkey and Greece. Pressuring the Commission for them to act so that they could be held accountable as well in case the people would drown, which luckily didn't happen, but unfortunately they were rescued by the Turkish after 16 hours at sea. So this is really important, because it's really, we need to hold accountable the EU's institutions for not talking vocally about what's happening and not pressuring member states. And they need to be vocal, because it's complicity, as we say. So so we did a lot of letters. I will not go into all what we did, because I think you've been made aware that the Parliament has not been silent of these violations. We had plenary debate, we had letters, but indeed to talk about the reaction of the Commission, because I think on the Parliament from the United Left to the Liberals, we have some built good alliance to denounce the situation. But what has been lacking is indeed reactions from the European Commission. And we had big hopes when Johansson was appointed commissioner after Avramopoulos, who had not done anything. Till now, she has not been vocal on any of these illegal practices. And in this case, yeah, I mean, we keep pressuring her. I mean, that is very important. We should not give up because we should hold her accountable. I mean, we had many dialogues with her, I mean, on Croatia, and we can see, for example, the fact that the Croatian police arrested last week 2 police officers who have been beating up, I mean, 2 Afghan migrants. Might be the result of this pressure, but the problem is that then it is part of the Croatian authority story that these are isolated incidents, which we know are not. So this pressure needs to increase. For example, on Croatia, we've had tons of letters, and if people, I mean, these letters are not secret, of exchange with the Commission regarding the funding that have been given to Croatia, because we think that it is not, I mean, Croatia, like any member states, has right to get funding under the ISF and the AMIF funding. But then Croatia got in December 2018, 7 million of additional funding called emergency funding for border surveillance that helped them to get dogs, border material surveillance. And the worst is that they even renewed this funding, and we don't know the amount, in December 2019. At a time, there was already increasing pressure of MEPs denouncing abuse, and it was, I mean, in full knowledge that there was no, you know, the myth of this monitoring mechanism that UNHCR and the Croatian Law Center are doing, which is just looking into existing police files, was gone. Anyway, the Commission was clearly aware of this, and you might have seen the article in The Guardian where one of my MEPs received by mistake some emails where the Commission, you can see, I mean, is even proposing to cover up some of the, to write themselves the report that the Croatian would give. So this is one of the issues we will keep increasing the pressure, and the Commission, at least on this one, was saying they could, if indeed all the facts are there, they could ask Croatia to give back some money. But the problem is that the funding was given on the basis that there was a monitoring mechanism. So it's not only handing back the money that was supposed to be for this monitoring mechanism, it's all the money of this 7 million that should be handed back in our, view, because this money has been used to buy material that had been used for abuse. The same, I will not detail, but I could speak about Greece as well. But on Greece, it's clear that with the change of government, they are really more afraid. The Commission is not speaking out. They are not vocal. On Croatia, we managed to have some letters. But on Greece, for example, one of our MEPs, also Claire Daly, she, in a private meeting with Commissioner Johansson, also said, why did not the Commission make public the analysis of the emergency law in Greece? And why were you not vocal, criticizing what has been happening? And the commissioner was a bit shocked that she was accused of not having acted. And while she said, oh no, but the Greek authorities know very well that we weren't in agreement with this position. And, but this is nowhere present in the public domain. So this is clear that the option the Commission is doing at the moment is silent diplomacy. And that's an issue for us because in the meantime, these policies of pushbacks are just spreading all over the EU. What some speakers said before, this has become actually the mainstream policy. It's not an exception, and this is a clear issue. And one of the issues is that with the upcoming pact, that they're very secretive about this. So the information we have, because they are even hunting for leakers. Von der Leyen even, somebody leaked it to the German government, and then this person was being hunted. So, which in the past, people for leaking it to a government would not be hunted. So But just, I mean, we're afraid this is not going to change. I don't think they will put pushbacks, of course, as an official policy. But then, because it's still illegal in international law, if it would be legal, I think they would put it, as the Australians have done. But all the rumors we are hearing, for example, we're really worried about this that has been leaked only in the Greek press, which is about an emergency clause in the Asylum and Migration Pact. And we have heard at the EU Brussels level that it could be an emergency regulation. So this is even worse than a clause. It means it would be a whole regulation that can be put into place when you have a sudden influx of people at the borders. And this would mean suspension of all the other asylum regulations or directives. So we are really worried about this. And because this is clearly the least, a common least denominator that will be applied in this pact, because the Commission wants to have an agreement by all member states. And as we know, I mean, we have a Visegrad bloc and we have other member states, I mean, who are really looking to seal completely the borders and not having anybody enter. And that's clearly in the direction they're taking. The pact will only be presented after the summer. They keep postponing it. And the other thing we are worried, I mean, the whole goal was to propose another Dublin, which is might be called a border management proposal. And that today there was an article in El País on the negotiations between the member states, because on this one there have been lots of non-papers of different governments having different position. And clearly, I mean, you could read today that the Germans are even trying to have returns being part of the solidarity mechanism, which is not a new proposal. It was some years ago, it was already in some non-papers. And the fact that if you don't take in people in a distribution mechanism, you could even pay development money, or maybe not even development money, border control money in Africa, because it just had funding contribution to Africa. So it could be anything. I don't even know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It could be externalization of border control. So, so this is really worrying. And then the pact would come with also amended regulation on procedures, on screening at the borders. And I'm really afraid that what they will seek to replicate is the models they've been having in Hungary and the Greek hotspots, but making it detention for everybody. And we have lots of fears on this. I mean, because you could imagine, I mean, if they would have also in Bosnia, I mean, closed camps, or I know that Croatia has always refused to be a hotspot. I'm closing it now. So, but just that might be the pressure. So sorry to be long.
No, it's, I just want to say that it is like really like scary, everything what you have been telling, like all these worries, what they want to, I mean, what is going to maybe happen to us. And it is very nice that you have mentioned this case from Croatia, because this gives a bit of hope. And our participant here is also Antonija Pindulic from the Center for Peace Studies from Croatia, who was running this case and who will tell us a bit more about that. And also some other people from Greece who are involved in all these cases that you probably mentioned. And thank you very much. I will slowly give moderation to my colleague Maria Oshana from the Greek office of the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. And yeah, keep asking in the Q&A chat, and thank you everyone for answering these questions because our panelists were answering these questions while all this is happening. So thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm now going with you to the second part. And we have a second and a third part here. And because we are already running late, I will keep it very short. We have heard a lot already, and many issues have been come to the table, and we have realized that a lot of experiences that were shared and what we heard from the different regions is quite similar. And it all comes back to EU border management and policies. So nonetheless, we would like to give some more people the floor to add to what was already mentioned, either comments or experiences from their particular field of work, or even come up with issues that have not been tackled yet. We'll keep it really short, and we are inviting now another couple of speakers who will give short interventions of 2 to 3 minutes. Let's see if that works. It's not very much. In the third part, we wanna discuss together how we can join forces and how we can connect struggles along the Balkan route and between the different actors, which has been mentioned as something crucial already by some of the speakers. So anyone who has an idea, anyone who sees entry points for connecting, for joining forces, please feel free to put that in the chat, or the speakers that we will hear now, you might also refer to it if you have something that you find crucial, where we should connect or where we should join forces, or find that our struggle can continue together. So I would like to invite now, I hope it works, because we have never done this before. It's like, yeah, it works. I can see some of you already. So we are opening up the group now, and I would like to ask Barbara to start first, because Amandine ended with a European Union level. And Barbara, you are one of the co-authors of the recently published study, and you have been actively participating in the conclusions, in writing the conclusions. So maybe you would like to add something from that study and the conclusions.
Yes, hello, welcome everyone. So I prepared the main conclusions, and I don't know how to use 3 minutes about it. Maybe, okay, I just cancel my whole presentation and maybe just focus on this solidarity part. I guess this is what you have been encouraging us to do, right? Okay, well, in this intra-European externalization of the migration control to the non-European, or non-EU or non-Schengen countries along the Balkan route, the previously established notions of transit and receiving countries have been transformed. Also, so although there are not so many people in these countries, there are still more than they used to be before the crisis, right? So we have more people on the move. Also, the notion of the Balkan route has been somehow transformed into the Balkan circuit, meaning that people don't go into one direction anymore, but they go into many directions, back and forth, and in circles, basically, due to extreme police violence, pushback, militarization, razor fence, and all these developments other colleagues have been talking about. Additionally, there is this, along the whole route, there is this general political turn towards security, facilitated by governmental policies, practices, discourses, where refugees are increasingly presented as a threat to security, to the material, to the financial stability of our states, and even to our identity, to our culture, or way of life. Consequently, solidarious engagement, which was once, let's say, during the refugee crisis, perceived as humanitarian or as necessary or as something that is welcome, becomes lately, or in the past 2-3 years, labeled as something that is highly politicized, in a negative sense, not in a positive sense, and something that is very controversial. So this leads to increased hate speech and even physical violence towards people and places and structures of solidarity. Also, Niger was today starting with these issues, so it's obviously a very important one. But yeah, still activists along the route, they continue to monitor, especially the border violence, because of this extreme pressure that is coming from the governments. Also, most of the non-governmental sector somehow backed away from these issues. So mainly only activists remained on the field and remained loud about this. So this monitoring of border violence becomes one of the main aspects of activist work. And simultaneously, they are also trying to shift the focus of their interventions, like from borders and border regions and border violence and the spectacle of the border and the spectacle of the violence to the question of the borders of citizenship. What happens when people actually manage to enter EU? So what are these borders, political and social borders that cross our cities, our communities, and they're trying to maintain somehow the critical support for the open border or the humanitarian approach to the transit migration.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And so we are building this, yeah?
You have, you must close.
Yeah. Transnationally, this is something that good that developed in recent years, is this transnational networking across the Balkan route, these day-to-day connections. We call it sometimes a solidarity route, and I think this is the only way to fight a border regime, is to fight it with the solidarity regime, mm-hmm. Right? Meaning integrating into the struggle different actors, governmental, non-governmental, on different levels, social, political, national, supranational, and with different backgrounds and practices. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know it's a big issue, and there is very little time. But I think it's very interesting what you say about the narrative that has become stronger and stronger. This experience we do have in Greece very much as well, and because I think this is something that that is also on the what also Effie Lazzoudi would like to talk about a little bit. The problem of racism, increased racism. I would like to ask Effie to follow with a short intervention. Effie, is that okay?
Yes, it is okay. Great. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's very difficult to speak very shortly, especially for the racism regime in Lesbos, where we are based. Actually, we are talking about a situation that is getting worse and worse during the last months, but we are not talking about something new. Everything was implemented as a policy before from right-wing governments in Greece. So we are going back to a scenery that is getting that is getting more and more dark for all of us, but it's not new. Everything was there. The extreme violation of the rights of refugees, the criminalization of solidarity, and what is happening now on top of everything is the attacks against the NGO people, solidarity people, activists, human rights defenders, which went to a peak during the beginning of March. The authorities, the local authorities that kind of participating and supporting these reactions, and the fact that now we are talking about an extreme stigmatization of NGO workers, which means everyone that is not against refugees. So we have actually what I want to put the point on is actually this racism growing in the local society and another level in Europe. Because for me, the main issue that we are talking about, all of us, is not only about refugees. It's not only about the human rights of refugees. It's about the human rights of all, and about a Europe that, a face of Europe that is getting to a very, very dark point of societies that are legitimizing these policies. For me, the most worrying thing is this, that we have citizens in Lesbos attacking solidarity people in the streets, severe attacks that they were never punished and very generalized in the beginning of March. We have people that they are very afraid to talk publicly as an NGO member or as a human rights defender or a solidarity person because they can be attacked anywhere. We are talking about citizens that are asking in front of a boat full of refugees, they are asking to take the boat away, to push back the boat or to sink the boat, which is terrifying. Okay, and I believe this is the most horrifying part of this, of what is happening now, is that this policy is implemented and the politicians that are using this xenophobia and fear and the discrimination and the violation of rights of refugees are really creating this very dark scenery. Now, to give you some examples connected to our work as a group in Lesbos in Pikpa. During the COVID-19, we started to host, the big issue was also minors, as you know. We started to host we did a lot of effort to host 30 minors in a transit camp in Pikpa, in a transit shelter, because Pikpa is there already for vulnerable cases. And we had the support of UNICEF, but no support of the authorities, actually. We managed, during the COVID, we managed to have also isolation areas in Pikpa in case of, and keeping all the measures. And now, with the new law about NGOs that we have in Greece, that is very difficult for many NGOs to register, but also for independent groups, it's impossible, or independent volunteers. We have controls all the time, which is financial controls inside Pikpa, controls about the labor, the hygienic services, and the environmental thing, which means that, and actually they make comments about the hygienic condition of Pikpa. I mean, the people that are supporting the situation in Moria. I mean, which is, for me, it's a scandal. And I find it very, very difficult to accept that the authorities, I know that this is happening, but instead of supporting NGOs, doing better work and provide better services, they are stigmatizing their work and they are attacking them. I think that, of course, control is important. Of course, we need to follow the rules, and we need to follow rules. But this means that also the state policy needs to follow rules and not to violate all kinds of human rights.
Thank you. Thank you, Effie. Effie, we couldn't see you. I don't know if you didn't have your camera on, but we could hear you very well. Thank you very much for your input.
I didn't understand that I had my camera.
Now we see.
It doesn't matter, okay.
And I would like to add, because you missed to introduce yourself, PICPA is a grassroots organization that is operating an independent camp amongst many, many other things on Lesbos. So, and it's practically an alternative to the disgraceful hospitality structures of the state, such as Moria and others. Thank you very much, Effie.
Thank you.
As we are in Lesbos right now, I would like to ask Nasha Dailiani to follow up straight away, and then we will go back to Croatia and Serbia. Natasha, you have the floor. Thank you. And maybe each of you say for 1 second from which organization you are.
Okay. Hi, this is Natasha Dailiani. I'm a lawyer and I'm a member of the organization, grassroots organizations, Legal Center Lesbos. It's operating in Lesbos 4 years now. And we are providing free legal aid and assistance to migrants and asylum seekers through all their procedure, and also monitoring human rights violations happening. So I really don't know, there is so much to add and there is so much to comment on. It's very hard. The situation is full of climaxes lately. We always say things cannot get worse, but the reality is that they're getting worse. So trying to answer why, and if it's a European level problem or a national problem, I think it's very complex to answer. For me, the European level of this whole issue is in a very distance. I cannot really understand the politics and how different countries at the moment are interacting between them, and if they have common views on the policy. So what I can witness is that in Greece, the hostility has increased a lot. So it goes to the, of course, what Evie said, to the hostile environment for NGOs only in the field of international protection. So there is a discrimination against other organizations, but also a very hostile treatment from the government. It's obvious they don't want people to be there and to support migrants and asylum seekers in their process. Providing legal aid, as we are doing, we are now restricted to monitoring mainly situation, which is good and very important, but not really being able to fully assist people in the procedure and to help them to fulfill in a right way their asylum process. So we are standing there and watching, and on the other hand, we are imposed of all these obligations to be able to operate to begin with. And the focus goes somewhere else instead of going to our work. So this is one issue very, very important we have to deal with lately. And also it is accountability of the European Union, but also it's depending on the implementation in the policies of the specific government. This government is especially hostile. It is limiting everything that already was a restriction. It makes it even worse. So the COVID was an excuse to make people to be more isolated. The COVID was an excuse for the pushbacks to increase because there was no way to monitor them. There was an increase. Of course, pushbacks are happening all the time, but there was an increase on the sea. Greece is not really has a reputation of pushbacks on the sea. Now this is happening continuously and systematically. They're using motorless life rafts and approaching people and pushing them back. So we are at the moment monitoring this kind of pushbacks of survivors, 30 survivors exposed to collective expulsions on the sea, 8 different collective expulsions happening the last 3 months. And also the narrative is changing. I think we're even going from hostility to indifference. Indifference of the society, of what is becoming with these people. If they manage to be in Greece, if they manage to get papers later, what is happening? Indifference of what is happening with minors who are trying to find the families in Europe. There is a lot of issues and it's very complex to analyze, but for sure we are in a very, very hostile environment, and this has to be a starting point for this kind of solidarity between groups beyond borders and beyond countries, because I don't think that on a European level there is so much to achieve at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And what you have mentioned has already also been mentioned by Barbara before, who was talking about the change of narrative, where solidarity all of a sudden is a threat rather than something that one refers to as a positive culture of welcoming. And I think this is something we observe all over Europe, and especially along the Balkan route. Picking up the point that you just mentioned, that you are now sort of reduced or pressed into monitoring rather than doing your real work, I would like to now give Antonia Pindulic the word. She's a lawyer and she works for the Center for Peace Studies, who are also doing legal cases. Antonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Yes, it's also very challenging. I didn't know where to start on all of this, because in Croatia, as you all know, we have many cases of pushbacks. It's really a practice. It's been a practice for almost 4 years now, and also I agree completely with some of my colleagues that raised the issue that this is actually the EU policy that Croatia, as Greece, is actually implementing. And that is a huge problem, obviously. And in Center for Peace Studies, we deal with different type of support towards refugees and other migrants. I am a legal advisor, so I mostly deal with providing free legal aid and strategic litigation. At the moment, we do now have a case in front of the European Court of Human Rights on the pushback of Afghan family, where a child that was 6-year-old died because she got hit by a train after she got pushed back. And also more recently, so it's been maybe 2 weeks now, that we filed a criminal complaint against the Croatian policeman for torturing and for degrading treatment, for pushbacks of a group of Pakistani and Afghani refugees that, among other, got sprayed on their heads with orange spray. So this is just to give you a taste of what we are dealing with and how we are trying to change something and to actually get to the point where we have an effective investigations of these cases, because it's been a practice, as I said, for almost 4 years, and there hasn't been an effective investigation on any of this. So when it comes to strategic litigation, it's of course very important that Center for Peace Studies is part of Border Violence Monitoring Network, which is a network of organizations and activists that monitor the pushbacks and the situation on the border with Serbia and Bosnia and Croatia. And we also conduct visits to Bosnia, and this is how we learn about the cases, and this is how we can offer our support. So that is very valuable in our work. What is also very valuable in dealing with this is especially working with NGOs that provide free legal aid that are on the route. We are very involved with organizations in Slovenia and in Italy and Bosnia and Serbia, and we are trying at this point to formalize somehow organizations that provide like a network of organizations that will provide free legal aid in a sense that maybe we can somehow create a network that would meet maybe monthly and just share experience and share what's being done on the legal level in the countries on the route. So from my side, I would really be keen to connect with NGOs providing free legal aid, so we can create a cooperation on and strengthen our collaboration as well. That I don't want to go into other issues, but I'm very grateful to Ms. Bach for covering what's been done now. That 2 policemen were arrested, and of course it shows that the pressure from above, let's say, it's really working. But in the end, we are also afraid that this is that Ministry of Interior is actually trying to say, okay, there are a couple of bad policemen that do this, while it's been a practice for years now, and there've been policemen that came out explaining how this practice is being done, explaining how it's illegal and how these are illegal orders that they are pressured and they are forced to implement. Of course, on this I could talk more, but I'll stop now here, and thank you.
Maybe we can put an article in the chat that refers to the case that you were mentioning just now, so that people can copy and paste it and go more into detail. You have already started talking about what we want to go to in the 3rd part. Thank you very much for that, because I think the question of networking and better connecting struggles is probably crucial for all of us, and we hope that by listening to each other in this interactive format, everyone already sees maybe an entry point for collaborating with others, so to join forces and be stronger. Talking about actual cases, I would like to give Nikola Kovacevic, I hope I pronounced it right, the floor, who is also can also talk about legal cases that you are working on in Croatia and Serbia, as far as I know. Nikola, you have the word, if you are still here.
I think he just dropped out.
I think we lost Nikola. Okay, and then in that case, I would like to give Natasha Strahini the word from Refugee Support Aegean, which is based on Chios Island. Natasha, you are here?
Yeah, hello.
Thank you, hi.
First of all, thank you for the invitation to give me the chance to participate in this webinar. It is very important to share views. The situation in Greece is more or less already known, and my colleagues already referred to this. What it is, I would like to focus on the problems regarding the pushback operations that we recently monitor. First of all, let's say that just to give you an information about the Refugee Support AG and my organization, we provide free legal aid in the asylum procedure and family reunification, but we also monitor human rights violations. We are based in Lesbos, Chios, and Athens. I live permanently in Chios, and I mention this because I have been involved in the refugee issue since 2001, a long time. So really the pushback operations are not something new. Quite as Eleni Taku mentioned earlier, that they never actually stopped. What it is really alarming right now, it is that it's getting even more aggressive and it is more visible than ever. This is the first time that the authorities actually admit that something is happening in the sea. This is up to now, they always refuse such practices, and they never thought that, they never admitted that there was something going on there. Now, on the argumentation of border protection and surveillance, they can act against the refugee boats and implement practices that we knew they existed, but now we have audiovisual material from the refugees themselves, in some cases, to prove that. The thing is that, and here comes the first problem, that this is not considered as a proof. There is not enough documentation of such cases. It is extremely difficult. The victims of pushbacks are on the move. In case they are returned back to Turkey, it is very difficult to trace them, but also it is very dangerous to trace them, not only for them, but also for ourselves, as we could be accused of smuggling and involved in trafficking. So we have seen up to now, in the very few cases that have managed to be in front of the courts, there is no effective investigation, actually, and that there is a very weak point to support such cases before the court, exactly due to lack of evidence. Now, just a question from my side, that because it seems now that border monitoring is not enough right now. It seems that we need somehow organize ourselves a little bit better, not only networking, because networking is really crucial to share views and information to understand where everybody stands, but we need perhaps an idea could be to create a kind of a network to act and react on the time of a pushback, when a pushback is happening. I don't know if this is possible, actually. It's something new. Amadine mentioned earlier that they tried to intervene in a recent today operation of pushback, but this could be a more a step further, how the civil society and NGOs can really react to such operations. So I don't want to keep more because I think that everyone has talked more. So that's all from me now.
Thank you very much. Yes, what you describe is something that I think this is a very crucial thing, that it's not only still happening, the illegal pushbacks, but they are now visible and everybody knows about them, and less people seem to care. So human rights violations big time happen, and we can even follow them in real time, as Amadine was describing in the beginning. But the authorities don't react. And even, I mean, I can say that for Greece, in Greece, the authorities even indirectly justify it. maybe we can summarize later on how we can address this issue. I think Nicola is back with us. Nicola, are you here with us again?
Here, I apologize, the connection broke.
No problem, Nicola. It's your turn.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for having me here. I think this meeting is very important because I heard a lot of interesting things which are related to a frustration that all of the lawyers on the Balkan route share when it comes to properly challenging the practices which amount to torture, which amount to collective expulsions and violation of the principle of non-refoulement. I was introduced to this group by Vladan, and thanks Vladan again for allowing me to be here. And on behalf of the A11 Initiative for Economic and Social Rights, who was very active during the COVID outbreak in Serbia and the numerous violations, limitations, and also derogations of human rights of refugees and migrants in Serbia. But I have to say that I also litigate cases as a strategic litigation officer for one of the NGOs in Serbia as well, called the Belgrade Center for Human Rights. And then I'm also deeply involved in establishing one network of lawyers in Serbia that will have a name to tackle the cross-border violence. So when I was listening to Antonio, when I was listening to other colleagues in Greece, I was very much inspired by their need to establish some kind of formal cooperation which will have a name to cooperate on both sides. I think that very good example of cooperation can be found in the support that, for example, I had the opportunity to provide to the Hungarian Helsinki Committee in 2015, when the barbed wire fence, Roške and Tompar were established, and when there was an agreement for us to wait on the other side on the people who were first introduced into these new procedures, and to, let's say, obtain power of attorney to document cases properly, and to allow Hungarian lawyers to properly challenge practices introduced by the Hungarian government. And 5 years after, we got the Grand Chamber case of Ilyas and Ahmed, which was semi-successful, but very soon after, we got the European Court of Justice decision on the unlawful deprivation of liberty in Roške and Tompa. So I think that the response to this should not only be documenting, but also a very much articulated strategic litigation, and not only on the issue of collective expulsions and non-refoulement, because if we follow the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights, we can see that it is not that easy today to tackle issues such as pushbacks and collective expulsions, especially after ND and NT versus Spain case, and the recent case Asadi and others versus Slovakia. But I also think that litigating these kind of cases from the perspective of Article 3 of the European Convention, for example, where we have systemic use of violence, which sometimes amounts to torture, but also other forms of ill treatment, I think that this kind of initiatives can have a very deterring effect on the border authorities. And I really am happy to hear that the colleagues from CMS were successful in submitting criminal complaints. But when we go back to what's a good criminal complaint means, what does the good case means? It means that you have to properly document this. It means that you need to create this connection between the event and, for example, the injuries and the statements of the individuals. So I think that one of the things that are lacking to all of these networks, especially in the Balkans, is the lack of proper documentation of individual cases, which can be based, for example, on the standards and principles which are arising from the Istanbul Protocol. I will share this later on the chat, but 2 years ago, we did a small mission that lasted for 2 weeks on the border between Serbia and Croatia, where we tried to use forensic experts, psychologists, and lawyers to holistically document our case and to, let's say, increase the credibility of allegations, because we all know that the border authorities are rejecting the allegations. They're declining that these people have ever been on Croatian or Hungarian or Bosnian soil. So I think that the quality of documentation needs to improve, and that cooperation between NGOs is crucial to tackle this properly and to put governments in a situation which will force them to make a better explanation than we never saw these people. So I think that one of the ideas and one of the outcomes of this meeting should definitely be that we stay in touch and somehow design the methods on how to document properly different cases on different borders. We live in the 21st century. Applications on the cell phones, modern technology can assist us to exchange data very, very quickly. And the last thing I would like to mention is that a couple of months ago, I was a part of the group that tried something which is very contentions from the legal point of view. And okay, then we can maybe share this later on. But I think that the cooperation and to increase the quality of documenting cases which involve violence, which involve pushbacks, is crucial. And I think that like lawyers from one side should provide material from the lawyers on the other. So for us in Serbia, we have to work with colleagues in Croatia, and vice versa. People from Macedonia and Bulgaria should work for us. So I will stop here. We produced several reports on the COVID-19 that Vladan shared with us, and I'll be more than happy to join these further discussions and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Regarding documentation, I want to recommend to check out the link that Eleni Taku has posted in the chat regarding the work of Human Rights 360 together with Forensic Architecture, which have achieved quite a lot, at least a lot of public and media attention on their documentation of illegal pushbacks and various human rights violations. And I think, yeah, the question of monitoring and documenting was also raised by others. I think this is a good entry point where we maybe can get together better and along the whole of the Balkan route, including Greece, which is not yet that intensely connected with some of the other Balkan countries. We have two more interventions. I would like to ask Miha Turk first to give a short comment. Miha, maybe you can say which organization you are from, because I don't know you. You are a surprise guest. And after that, we will have Marta, and then we are also running out of time. Thank you, Miha.
Hello, thank you for inviting me, even though you did not know I was coming. So I'm from Ljubljana, from Slovenia. I'm from a member of an initiative called Infokolpa, together with Andrej, and also Barbara is our avid supporter. We are part of Border Violence Monitoring Group, together with the Center for Peace Studies and several other organizations. We are not a formal organization, we're not even an NGO, we are just a collection of activists, journalists, and asylum seekers and people who have been rejected by our increasingly restrictive asylum system. Our work is basically part integration activities with our members, different advocacy actions, events planning, and parts of strategic litigation. We have several cases now in the court, which I won't go into detail as they are currently unfolding, but I think we will see in a few weeks or days some positive results, hopefully. I think this panel, thank you again for inviting us to this panel. It is very interesting. To add to our group is that we do a lot of activities, and I think in our country we're sort of in the center of the main organization, which I think is absolutely terrible, because we are in no way or shape qualified or competent or to be handling these things. And this is one major issue, that there is no official instance that is monitoring this. I'm very, of course, I am all for networking and everything else, but I'm very skeptical of this, as I don't think this is or should be a responsibility of any of us. There are big organizations that have by law responsibility to monitor this. UNHCR comes to mind, as well as our own national governments, and of course the mechanisms that should ensure that it is acting lawfully. So this is one point. The second point is, and I don't want to be a party breaker, but I'm very, very skeptical of this. You know, I think pushbacks are a fact. Officially, they are a conspiracy theory. Of course, we still need to prove, we need to find that perfect case with all the stars will align and the world will know for sure that this is happening. But everybody, I think, knows. Our Ministry of Interior, I think 3 weeks ago, said quite casually in an interview, yeah, we pushed people back and then they're pushed to Bosnia. What you gonna do? We're doing our job. If we don't do it, Austrians will do. We'll close the border. And so this is, I think, one part of this that is, I think, very, very problematic, and I personally have some problems with it. It's the same with our work. You know, sometimes I think that we're, you know, that as those scribes in ancient times, where they would just copy this old ancient text of philosophy and literature, and hopes that somebody will read and hear in the very, very distant future. I think this is very similar with our work that we do, that we just meticulously copy and write about each and every case. I'm also very skeptical, and this is again one of my personal dilemmas, is this, you know, as I said, this is a fact that this is happening. I think it's widely accepted. Nobody will ever admit it because the implications would be so terrible that the ramifications would be, I don't know. Yeah, so this is one point. But it's becoming a fact, you know. In one point we are doing this different lawsuits. On the other side, you know, this academic aspect is trying to find new terms, how to, you know, best describe this, as I think the point of this book is, what was it, it's not Balkan route, but this circular route. I think very soon there will be a new concept needed, as Italians started to monitor the border much more strictly. There have been, I think, for now, from our count, more than 100 pushbacks from Italy to Slovenia, from Slovenia to Croatia, and then to Bosnia. So I don't think even the Balkan route term even the Balkan part might not be valid anymore. In Slovenia, we also have a play now in the National Theatre about pushbacks. It's called Game, and it's very popular, and everybody's talking about it, and it's becoming a whole academic, cultural, strategic genre. And I don't know, it just seems that we're maybe just, I don't know, helping to normalize this, or even, I don't know. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult, but don't get me wrong, we are very much involved in similar things, and I'm not critical to you or to myself. It's just, I think these are some of the dilemmas that are maybe worth noticing. And even, you know, we get all this money from European Union, who is, as we find out very meticulously, that is responsible for this. But at the same time, the European Union can say, yeah, but we give you money to find out how responsible we are, and maybe we're just washing people's hands. Yeah, this is my intervention. I'm sorry, you put me on the last spot, so maybe just an intervention. Yeah, sorry if I'm not being constructive.
Thank you very much. We have already gathered, we have already put one link into the chat. If you have a website or you want to add something to the chat so we can get to know more of your activities, please feel free to add it to the chat. I think this, what you were mentioning about the theater sounds interesting to me, because of course art and culture can also be a very positive contribution to scandalizing what is going on, and to you know, like to demanding human rights. But as you describe it, it seems a bit dodgy. I don't know, but I'd like to learn more about it after this. Okay, we have one last intervention, which is from Marta Stojic-Mitrovic. I hope again that I pronounce it right. Marta is from Trans-Balkan Solidarity Group, and therefore she can also refer to transnational organizing. We are running out of time, and Marta, if you feel capable and inspired, maybe you can pick up some of what has been said before and summarize it maybe in the spirit of our question, how to better connect, how to better join forces. And then we hope we will come to a conclusion, and I will make a suggestion for a follow-up. Marta, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for organizing this event. First of all, just to remind them, migration per se is transnational. People who land in Greece in 1 month will be in Slovenia, then they will be pushed back to Bosnia, and who knows where they will end. We, on the basic level, we are dealing with the same people on the move through Europe. We also deal with the consequences of the same brutal policy, which is dividing, which is spreading outside of the European Union, which is including regions outside of it into its operational horizon, assigning them with different statuses in that conglomerate of securitization practices. We also have the same institutional or similar institutional responses in different states, the same umbrella organizations, the same funds. We are dealing with similar techniques, but also we have similar grassroots initiatives that are so overwhelmed with local struggles that they usually stay isolated and cannot overcome these local borders. What we can do is to connect and disclose this hypocrisy that Miha was talking about, to show the consequences of the policies of the policies which are using discourses to manufacture some existential threats and then making up different instruments and techniques how to protect us, and at the same time they are justifying and making us easily give up our own rights and our freedoms in the name of some security. We see that the anti-migrant discourses are crossing borders. We have, for example, in Serbia, we have the same narratives, for example, about settlement of migrants, which are on the territory of Serbia, which are completely unapplicable on a practical level. But they became a reality in the minds and understandings of the public. What we can do is to unite and to make a platform with different marginalized groups that will allow us to speak, to spread critical voices, critical interpretations, and of the situation that is happening. To connect people who are in asymmetric relations with the people who are on the power to decide about policies and implement them. This is something that we can think about some post-nation state political membership, about re-subjectivization of people on the move. We usually treat them as objects who are passing through our territories, but we do not give them subjectivity, political position to speak, to disclose what is happening, and also we do not have context in which they can communicate and relate and connect with other political groups. We should find out how to build not only counter narratives but also counter practices, some of which are legal battles, humanitarian assistance, different types of communication, but also what we cannot do isolated in our nation state, but we have to spread further and not go only into the regions like Balkans, but also to connect with centers of policies which are made, that meaning that we should be visible without interpretations in centers, political centers, which are shaping our policies. This would be something that can be done when we erase the distrust that is still existing between different levels, like grassroots organizations, NGOs and other institutions that are witnessing and trying to collect evidence and to disclose these inhuman practices. And with this, I would like to end this intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. We are coming to an end time-wise, and I think we had a lot of input. I personally think it's a mission impossible to summarize all of what has been said. I try to throw out a few keywords, maybe. I think what we have listened to and what we heard as demands is that monitoring of rights violations is crucial, but it is not enough. There has to be good documentation, there has to be good media work, and as well as legal work. So legal action is necessary, but it has to be, we need to not make it only successful in court, but also by changing the narratives and changing the atmosphere. So there is obviously a lot of similar challenges and similar experiences in the different regions of the Balkans, as well as a lot of organizations working on the ground or on the institutional political advocacy level. And from what I heard from all of you is that you feel it important to network and to exchange and maybe see where we can also have joint strategies. So as we don't have the time to discuss this further, my suggestion would be that all of you, all of the speakers here, and also our attendees who might be active on the ground or might be interested in becoming active, you can contact us, the offices of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung in Greece and in Southeastern Europe. We have all the contacts of the speakers, so we will connect you with each other, and then maybe we can see how we can follow up on this and turn the good exchange and the interesting exchange into something practical. By saying that, I want to thank all of you for participating, for actively contributing, for forgiving us for the time restrictions, and for referring to each other and listening to each other. And yes, thanks very much. Thanks a lot from me. And I will hand over for the last word to my colleague Vladan and say goodbye to you. Have a good evening. Thank you. Sorry, Vladan, I'm sorry, I have to say something. One very important and active participant that you haven't seen at all is Wenke, our colleague Wenke from the headquarters in Berlin. Wenke has been setting up the Zoom. She has been organizing and coordinating yeah, there she is, the room. She has been dealing with the chat. Thanks a lot, Wenke. Without you, it would have been a mess. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm really happy to greet all of you from Belgrade. And I hope that we will stay in touch. And I'm really glad that, that we manage to connect people from so many different countries of our region, but who are still working on the same thing. And this is the most important aspect for me from this event, to find out this. Thank you very much again.